We worship at the altar of progress. We imagine salvation as a sterile capsule from a lab, and everything before the MRI as primitive barbarism. We turn away from nature with disgust, believing that technology and plastic have made us invincible. But reality is cynical. Modern medicine is still elbow deep in blood and grime. Peel back the pretty packaging, and you'll find that cardiology is built on dynamite. Surgeons trust maggots more than scalpels, and the lives of millions depend on viper venom and rat poison. Evolution doesn't create new solutions, it just polishes old survival methods. Prepare for a complete deconstruction of your home medicine cabinet. Today we'll find out why doctors transplant other people's feces, why cocaine is still legal in hospitals, and how ancient moldy bread outsmarted modern antibiotics. 33 pieces of evidence that the past isn't just alive, it's saving you right now. Let's open it up. Number 1. A vampire on staff. Picture a 21st century operating room. Titanium tools, lasers, monitors displaying vitals with pinpoint accuracy. The surgeon has just performed a miracle, reattaching a patient's severed finger. A masterpiece of precision, and just when it seems technology has triumphed, an assistant brings in not a new gadget, but a jar of slimy, writhing creatures. This is not sabotage. In 2004, the FDA, America's chief medical agency, officially recognized medical leeches, Hirudo medicinalis, as a legal medical device. The mechanics are simple. When a surgeon stitches arteries, blood flows into the finger, but restoring venous blood flow out is much harder. The tissue turns blue, swells, and prepares for necrosis. The leech in this system is a perfect external pump, a biological USB drive that drains the corrupted files of stagnant blood while injecting anticoagulants and anesthetics. Built-in software that keeps the system from crashing. So yes, your high-tech salvation might depend on a gothic creature whose design hasn't been updated since the dinosaurs. Apparently the original developer did such a good job that their successors just decided, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Number 2. Surgeons from hell. If you thought leeches were unpleasant, get ready for a horror upgrade. Imagine a wound that won't heal, gangrene. The tissue is rotting away, and even the sharpest scalpel can't clean out all the dead flesh without damaging the living. Antibiotics are no longer working, amputation seems imminent, and then the doctor suggests biosurgery. It sounds cool, but in reality, it means they're about to unleash 100 sterile green bottlefly larvae into your wound. Maggots. These little monsters are the most precise surgeons in the world. Their programming is hardwired to devour only dead, necrotic tissue without touching a single millimeter of healthy flesh. They work where the human eye and hand are powerless. What's more, in the process, they secrete ammonia and other substances that disinfect the wound better than any antiseptic. It's like releasing an army of tiny cleaning robots into an infected system. Robots that not only remove the junk, but also update the antivirus database. It's just that these robots are millions of years old and, to put it mildly, not very photogenic. Number 3. The poison grandma cocktail. Your grandmother or grandfather probably takes a small pill for blood pressure every morning. It might be captopril or enalapril. They likely have no idea that they owe their steady heartbeat to one of South America's most dangerous snakes, the jararaca, or Brazilian pit viper. This creature's bite causes a sharp, catastrophic drop in blood pressure, leading to shock and death. Scientists became intrigued. What if this bug could be turned into a feature? They broke down the venom into its components, like programmers reverse engineering malicious code, and found the peptide that blocked the enzyme causing blood vessels to constrict. This became the basis for an entire class of drugs, ACE inhibitors. Essentially, we took nature's deadly weapon, reduced its power 1,000-fold, and turned it into a daily medication for millions. Every time your grandmother takes her pill, she's essentially taking a microdose of snake venom calibrated for peaceful purposes. The universe loves ironic plot twists like that. Number 4. Explosive calm. Alfred Nobel, the man who built a fortune on dynamite, suffered from angina, agonizing chest pains. His doctors prescribed nitroglycerin, the very same nitroglycerin that was the active ingredient in his greatest invention. Nobel flatly refused. "Isn't it the irony of fate," he wrote, "that I am prescribed to take the very substance I spend my life producing? The doctors call it trinitrate of glycerin so as not to frighten the patients." He died without ever using the medicine out of sheer stubbornness, and he was wrong. Nitroglycerin isn't just an explosive. In microdoses, it causes the instant dilation of coronary arteries, saving the heart from oxygen starvation. It's like an emergency pressure release button in an overheating reactor. To this day, a nitroglycerin tablet under the tongue is the first line of aid for a heart attack. So the substance that can move mountains also saves millions of hearts. It's just that different tasks require different doses. Number 5. The forbidden gut upgrade. This sounds like the most disgusting idea in the history of medicine, but bear with me. Imagine your gut is a metropolis with millions of inhabitants, microbes. One day, a gang of superbacteria called Clostridium difficile storms the city. They kill all the good guys and unleash total chaos, causing a deadly form of diarrhea. Antibiotics don't work. They just wipe out the remaining peaceful population. You're dying. The solution? A fecal transplant. Yes, it's exactly what you're thinking. Doctors take biomaterial from a healthy donor, dilute it, and introduce it into your system. It's like dropping a special forces team from a healthy ecosystem into a captured city. The new microbes quickly restore order, destroying the invaders. The Chinese, by the way, used this to treat food poisoning back in the 4th century, calling it yellow soup. Today, it's a cutting-edge procedure with a nearly 100% success rate where all of modern pharmacology has failed. Apparently, sometimes to fix a system, you just need to install a backup from a healthy server. Number 6. The divine antivirus. 3,000 years before Alexander Fleming noticed mold in his Petri dish, ancient Egyptians were already using antibiotics. Of course, they didn't know the word. They simply did what centuries of practice had taught them. They took moldy bread and applied it to festering wounds. To them, it was magic, a gift from the gods. Today, we understand that the greenish mold is the fungus Penicillium, which produces penicillin, a substance that kills bacteria. In essence, an Egyptian priest applying a bread poultice was no different from a modern nurse giving an injection. He just had a different user interface and zero understanding of the mechanics. They launched an antibacterial protocol without even knowing about the existence of the files it was meant to delete. This is a classic example of humanity finding a working exploit in nature's operating system long before we learned to read its code. Number 7. Aspirin from a log. When we have a headache after a wild party or a rising fever, we reach for aspirin, a convenient, small, white tablet, a symbol of modern civilization, but in fact, we're just drinking a concentrated brew of willow bark. Hippocrates in ancient Greece had his patients chew on willow bark to relieve pain and fever. He had no idea why it worked. Only 2,000 years later did scientists isolate the active substance from the bark, salicylic acid. Later, the Bayer company turned it into acetylsalicylic acid, or aspirin, making it gentler on the stomach. But the essence hasn't changed. We're still treating ourselves with wood shavings, just in a purified and branded version. It's as if we were still riding steam trains, but they were packaged in a futuristic shell and called a hyperloop. The engine is still the same. Number 8. Poison as a system administrator. Arsenic. The word alone conjures images from Victorian detective novels. Cunning poisoners, pale victims, inheritances, the king of poisons, and a murderer's favorite weapon. Now, imagine that this very poison is officially administered intravenously to patients in oncology clinics today. This isn't madness. Arsenic trioxide is an approved treatment for a form of blood cancer, acute promyelocytic leukemia. The magic, as always, is in the dose. In large quantities, it kills the cell entirely, causing organ failure. But in strictly calibrated microdoses, it acts like a system administrator with special privileges. It triggers apoptosis, programs self-destruction in cancer cells. The cell receives a delete yourself command and obeys. Thus, a poison that for centuries was associated with treacherous murder has become a high-precision weapon that kills the disease, leaving the patient alive. Fate loves a cruel joke. Number 9. A silver bullet for microbes. Stories about werewolves that can only be killed by a silver bullet have a sound scientific basis. The thing is, it doesn't work on mythical monsters, but on very real ones, bacteria. Silver ions have what's called an oligodynamic effect. They destroy the cell membranes of microbes and block the enzymes responsible for their respiration. In essence, for bacteria, silver is like a nerve agent. Humanity used this intuitively for thousands of years. They stored water in silver vessels to keep it from spoiling and applied silver coins to wounds. Today, this magical metal is experiencing a renaissance. Its ions are woven into the fabric of astronaut socks to prevent fungus, and it's used to coat medical catheters and burn dressings to prevent infection. So yes, silver is still the best weapon against foul creatures. It's just that the creatures turned out to be microscopic. Number 10. Rat poison for cardiac care. In the early 20th century, farmers in the US faced a strange problem. Cows that ate moldy sweet clover would bleed to death from the slightest scratch. Scientists discovered the culprit was a substance called decumerol, which blocked blood clotting. Pharmacologists quickly realized this would make an excellent rat poison. A rodent eats the bait and dies from internal bleeding. This is how warfarin came to the market. It was sold as rat poison for decades, until one day, a US Navy recruit tried to commit suicide by ingesting a massive dose. To his and the doctor's surprise, he was saved with a simple blood transfusion and a shot of vitamin K. This incident made the medical community wonder, if the effect is reversible, maybe it can be controlled. And so, warfarin moved from garden supply stores to pharmacies and became the leading blood thinner, saving millions from strokes and thrombosis. In essence, millions of patients take rat poison every day to keep from dying, just under a doctor's supervision. Number 11. The monsters return. In the history of pharmacology, some drugs have a bad reputation, and then there's thalidomide. This isn't just a bad reputation, it's a synonym for catastrophe. In the mid-20th century, it was prescribed to pregnant women as a safe sedative. The consequences were monstrous. Thousands of babies were born worldwide with phocomelia, underdeveloped flipper-like limbs. The drug was cursed and banned. It seemed this story would forever remain in textbooks as an example of medical error, but in medicine, as in a Hollywood horror film, the scariest monsters have a way of coming back. Decades later, it was discovered that the very mechanism that maimed embryos was incredibly effective against other diseases. Thalidomide was found to block the growth of new blood vessels, making it a powerful weapon against leprosy and multiple myeloma, a blood cancer that thrives by creating new vessels. Today, under the strictest control, this monster has returned and is saving lives. It's a grim reminder that in nature, there is no absolute evil or good. There's only a tool, and everything depends on how you use it. It seems at this point, logic has left the chat, but we're just warming up. We've already seen how poison becomes medicine and medieval creatures become surgeons. But if you think that's a bug, just wait. Next up are the real glitches in the Matrix, where Stone Age technologies prove to be more advanced than modern ones. Number 12. The Volcano Scalpel. Imagine the most expensive plastic surgeon somewhere in Beverly Hills. He's preparing for an operation that will define a Hollywood star's career. He picks up a scalpel, and this scalpel isn't made of steel, but of black volcanic glass. Obsidian. Yes, the same technology our Stone Age ancestors used to make arrowheads. The irony is that, on a molecular level, an obsidian blade is sharper than any, even the most advanced steel scalpel. Steel, even the finest, looks like a saw under a microscope. Obsidian, however, creates a perfectly smooth incision, traumatizing fewer cells. As a result, the wound heals faster, and the scar is practically invisible. It turns out that for the most delicate work, modern metallurgy loses to a technology that Neanderthals mastered. Sometimes, to take a step forward, you have to take 2 steps back, straight into the Paleolithic era. Number 13. Dragon saliva for diabetics. In the deserts of the southwestern United States lives a monstrous lizard called the Gila monster. It's a slow but venomous creature whose bite was long considered fatal. Scientists studying its venom discovered a unique component in its saliva, exenatide 4. This lizard eats only a few times a year, and this substance helps its pancreas wake up and produce the right amount of insulin to digest a huge meal. A light bulb went off in some lab. Wait a minute, that's exactly what people with type 2 diabetes need. Based on this component from the monster's saliva, a whole new class of drugs was created that now helps millions of diabetics control their blood sugar. So, when you see an ad for the latest super modern diabetes medication, remember, its source code was probably copied from the firmware of a poisonous desert lizard. Nature is the best programmer, it just doesn't always comment its code. Number 14. A poison for beauty and resuscitation. Belladonna, or deadly nightshade. In the Middle Ages, Italian ladies would put drops of this plant's juice into their eyes. It contains atropine, which dilates the pupils, making their gaze seem languid and mysterious. Belladonna translates to beautiful woman. Of course, this beauty came with the risk of complete blindness and poisoning, but fashion demanded sacrifice. Today, that same atropine is one of the most critical drugs in any paramedic's toolkit. It's injected injected intravenously for bradycardia. When the heart rate slows to a critical level, it literally slams the accelerator on the heart's rhythm, pulling a person back from the brink of death. Furthermore, atropine is the primary antidote for poisoning by organophosphate nerve agents like sarin or Novichok, so a substance used for centuries for questionable cosmetic purposes is now the last line of defense between life and death in the ICU and on the battlefield, from a fashion fad to a paramedic's kit. Number 15. Pharaoh's canned goods. When archaeologists opened the tombs of Egyptian pharaohs, they found pots of honey that were several thousand years old, and this honey was perfectly edible. It is the oldest and most perfect preserved food in human history. The secret is its composition. Low water content and high acidity create an environment where bacteria simply cannot survive. They die of dehydration. Today, this ancient principle is used in the most advanced clinics. Medical grade sterile honey, especially Manuka honey from New Zealand, is applied to wounds infected with superbugs resistant to all antibiotics, like MRSA. The honey draws moisture out of the wound, depriving bacteria of a breeding ground, while its enzymes create a mild hydrogen peroxide, further disinfecting the surface. It's like trying to put out a fire with an ancient fire extinguisher that somehow works better than all modern systems. The pharaohs knew something we didn't. Number 16. The Imperial Elixir for Malaria. The story of the gin and tonic isn't a story about having fun. It's a story of survival. British officers and officials serving in India were dying in droves from malaria. The only remedy was quinine, a bitter powder from the bark of the cinchona tree. To force themselves to drink the nasty stuff, they mixed it with carbonated water, tonic, and added gin to mask the taste. Thus, the famous cocktail was born. It wasn't recreation. It was a daily medical procedure. Today, we have more modern, synthetic anti-malarial drugs. But here's the catch. The malaria parasite constantly mutates and develops resistance to them. And when all the newfangled drugs stop working, doctors around the world return to good old quinine. It is still listed in the World Health Organization's protocols as a reserve drug, so the cocktail we associate with Friday nights is actually a combat elixir that is still saving lives in the world's hotspots. Number 17, a medicine older than the Bible, gout, a disease once known as the disease of kings because it often resulted from an excess of meat and wine. It causes sharp attacks of joint pain due to the deposit of uric acid crystals. Today, if you go to a doctor with this diagnosis, you'll likely be prescribed a drug called colchicine. It reduces inflammation and pain. Now for the interesting part. A reference to this substance, derived from the autumn crocus flower, was found in the Ebers Papyrus, an ancient Egyptian medical text dating back to around 1500 BC. This means that the medicine you'll get from a pharmacy in the 21st century has, in essence, not changed in the last 3,500 years. It's one of the oldest drugs in history to have survived in a virtually unchanged form. We've built spaceships and the internet, but to treat the disease of kings, we're still using a recipe from the time of Pharaoh Thutmose III. Consistency is the hallmark of mastery, or lazy developers. Number 18. Hormones from the stable. Millions of women going through menopause have taken and still take hormone replacement therapy drugs to ease the unpleasant symptoms. For decades, the most popular of these was Premarin. It sounds elegant, but its name is nothing more than a marketing code. It stands for pregnant mare's urine. Yes, urine of pregnant mares. For many years, this drug, containing the necessary estrogens, was literally harvested from the urine of thousands of pregnant horses kept on special farms. It was a gigantic and frankly foul-smelling business. Today there are synthetic and plant-based alternatives, but the fact remains, for half a century the gold standard of women's health was based on a byproduct of horses. It's a perfect example of how medicine takes the most unappetizing raw materials and turns them into a billion-dollar industry. The key is to come up with a beautiful name. Number 19. Van Gogh's yellow glasses. Look at Van Gogh's later paintings. The Starry Night, sunflowers. Notice how much yellow there is, how yellow halos surround the stars and lanterns. One theory suggests that this was not only the artist's brilliant vision, but also a side effect of his medication. Van Gogh suffered from epilepsy and possibly heart problems, and his physician, Dr. Gachet, prescribed him foxglove. The extract of this beautiful flower, digoxin, is still an essential drug for severe heart heart failure. But one of its side effects in case of an overdose is xanthopsia, seeing the world in yellow tones. It's possible the great artist saw the world precisely this way, awash in an anxious yellow light, because of his medicine. We'll never know for sure, but the thought is fascinating. The substance that supported his failing heart might have simultaneously shaped his unique artistic vision. Sometimes the bugs in the system are its greatest features. Number 20. The gold standard of pain relief. Imagine you are all of human civilization. You have 5,000 years, unlimited resources, and the best minds. Your task is to invent a painkiller that is guaranteed to work for the most horrific injuries, after major surgery, and in the final stages of cancer. Spoiler alert, you will fail, because the best solution was found back in ancient Mesopotamia. It's opium, the dried latex from the poppy seed pod, or more specifically morphine, which was isolated from it in the 19th century. Yes, we've developed hundreds of other analgesics, but when it comes to truly unbearable pain, the gold standard, the benchmark against which all others are compared, is still good old morphine. We have learned to split the atom and fly to Mars, but on the fundamental question of switching off the pain signal in the brain, we haven't advanced beyond the Sumerians who harvested poppy pods. It seems nature created the perfect master key to our nervous system on the first try. Number 21. A football field and a teaspoon. Activated charcoal. The simplest, cheapest, and most low-tech medicine imaginable. Just burnt and processed wood. In an era of complex sorbents and antidotes, it seems like an anachronism, but here's a mind-blowing fact. Thanks to its porous structure, the total surface area of the particles in a single teaspoon of activated charcoal is equal to that of a football field. This isn't just a medicine, it's a black hole for toxins. When you swallow it for poisoning, it isn't absorbed, but passes right through your gastrointestinal tract, adsorbing, that is, sticking to its giant surface, molecules of poisons, toxins, and waste products along the way. It's the most effective and fastest way to clear the cache of your stomach in an emergency. No complex chemistry, just pure physics and a vast surface area. Sometimes the most brilliant solutions are the most primitive. Number 22. The diet pretending to be a trend. Go to any trendy health blog, and you'll drown in advice about the ketogenic diet. We're told it's a super modern way to lose weight, boost your brain, and achieve enlightenment. This is all just marketing hype layered on top of an old medical technology. The keto diet, a diet with almost no carbohydrates and a high-fat content, was developed in the 1920s, and not for weight loss, but as a medicine. It was the only effective method for treating children with a severe form of epilepsy who didn't respond to any drugs. The mechanism is still not fully understood, but switching the brain's metabolism from glucose to ketone bodies, byproducts of fat breakdown, has a powerful anticonvulsant effect, and this method is still used today. So the next time a fitness guru tells you about the innovative keto diet, remember that this innovation is 100 years old, and it was invented not for six-pack abs, but to save children from epileptic seizures. At this point, the writers of reality seem to have gone to lunch and left an intern to write the script, because from here on, logic doesn't just limp, it hobbles on crutches of pure absurdity. Do you smell that? That's the smell of a common sense processor burning out as we realize we're treating pain with the very thing that causes it. Number 23, the fire patch. Have you ever tried a hot chili pepper? That burning sensation in your mouth is caused by a substance called capsaicin. It tricks our nerve receptors into thinking they're being exposed to high heat. Logically, you'd think this substance should be kept far away from already painful areas. But medicine works differently. Capsaicin is the active ingredient in most heating and pain-relieving patches and ointments for joint and muscle pain. Here's the trick. With prolonged exposure, capsaicin doesn't just irritate the nerve endings. It depletes their supply of something called substance P, the neurotransmitter that sends pain signals to the brain. In essence, the patch first screams at the nerve cell so loudly that it eventually goes deaf and stops transmitting any pain signals at all. It's like fighting a fire with a flamethrower. It sounds insane, but it works. Number 24, a brain reboot. Electroconvulsive therapy. In movies, it's always portrayed as torture, a grim asylum, a patient writhing in convulsions, a malevolent orderly. In reality, it looks very different. The patient is asleep under general anesthesia and is given muscle relaxants to prevent contractions. Then, a short, controlled electrical charge induces something like an artificial epileptic seizure in the brain, and this is the most effective and fastest acting treatment for severe suicidal depression and catatonia millennia when no pills work. It's the last hope when a person is literally fading away, refusing to eat or move. To this day, no one fully understands how it works. The most popular theory is that the electrical shock causes a massive release of neurotransmitters and essentially reboots the brain, like a frozen computer that you turn off and on again. Yes, it looks scary, but sometimes to fix the software, you have to hit the hard reset button. Number 25. The poison that smoothed wrinkles. Botulinum toxin, the most potent organic poison known to science. A substance that causes botulism, a fatal poisoning that paralyzes the respiratory muscles. A single gram is enough to kill 1 million people. And what did we do with it? We inject it into our faces. Botox is the brand name for that same botulinum toxin, just in microscopic purified doses. It blocks the nerve impulse to the muscle, causing temporary paralysis. Initially, it was used in ophthalmology to treat crossed eyes by relaxing the overstrained eye muscle. Then, someone noticed a pleasant side effect. The wrinkles above the switched off muscle smoothed out. And so, a deadly poison became a cosmetologist's main tool. But its applications are much broader. It's used to treat chronic migraines, muscle spasms and cerebral palsy, and excessive sweating. The story of Botox is a hymn to the principle that the dose makes the poison. Nature's most terrifying killer has become our servant. We just had to ask nicely. Number 26. The ENT surgeon's secret ingredient, cocaine. Ask anyone on the street and they'll tell you it's a dangerous and illegal drug, and they'd be right. But if you walk into an operating room at any advanced clinic where they perform surgery on the nasal septum, you'll see the surgeon soaking a cotton swab in a solution, and it will be a cocaine solution. The reason is that cocaine has a unique dual action. It's a powerful local anesthetic blocking pain. At the same time, it's a potent vasoconstrictor, meaning it sharply narrows blood vessels. For a surgeon operating inside the nasal cavity, which is riddled with capillaries, it's the perfect tool. It both numbs the area and almost completely eliminates bleeding, ensuring a clear surgical field. To this day, no synthetic alternative has been created that does both things as effectively. So yes, a substance with one of the worst reputations in the world remains an indispensable tool in delicate surgery. It's just not something you talk about at parties. Number 27. The universal killer, iodine. Discovered in 1811 from the ashes of seaweed. That good old bottle of iodine, or its modern, less stinging counterpart, povidone iodine. It may seem like something from your great-grandmother's first aid kit in our age of nanosilver and chlorhexidine. But here's the thing. In over 200 years of use, not a single bacterium has emerged that has developed resistance to iodine. Not one. It kills everything. Bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa. Its mechanism of action is too crude and universal. It simply oxidizes and destroys key proteins and nucleic acids of any living cell it touches. This isn't a precision-guided missile. It's carpet bombing at the cellular level. That's why it's still used to disinfect skin before surgery and to treat wounds. It's cheap, available, and merciless. Sometimes the oldest soldiers are the most reliable. Number 28. The herb with a dark side. In traditional Chinese medicine, there's an herb called ma huang. It has been used to treat coughs and fevers for 5,000 years. In the early 20th century, Western scientists isolated its active ingredient, ephedrine. It became the basis for a whole range of medicines for asthma, bronchitis, and the common cold, as it dilates the bronchial tubes and constricts blood vessels, reducing swelling. It sounds like another success story, but this dragon has a dark side. The chemical formula for ephedrine is very similar to that of amphetamine, and with a slight modification, it can easily be turned into methamphetamine, one of the most destructive synthetic drugs. Because of this, the circulation of pure ephedrine is now strictly restricted worldwide. It's a paradox. An ancient cough remedy turned out to be just one step away from being the raw material for a 21st century plague. It's as if the blueprints for a child's toy could be used to assemble a weapon. Number 29. Chemotherapy from a tree. For centuries, Native Americans used the bark and needles of the Pacific yew tree to treat a variety of ailments, from rheumatism to inflammation. To them, it was a sacred tree with special power. In the 1960s, as part of a massive program to find natural anti-cancer agents, scientists decided to test it, and they hit the jackpot. They discovered a substance in the yew bark, which they named paclitaxel. It had a unique property. It blocked the process of cell division by literally freezing freezing the cell's internal skeleton. For cancer cells, which divide uncontrollably, this was a death sentence. Today, paclitaxel and its derivatives are key drugs in the chemotherapy of breast, ovarian, lung, and many other cancers. Thus, the knowledge of shamans and healers passed down through word of mouth was verified in labs and transformed into one of the most powerful weapons in modern oncology. Sometimes you just need to listen to very old stories. Number 30. A Nobel Prize from a military bunker. Sweet wormwood, Artemisia annua. In traditional Chinese medicine, a decoction of it was used for centuries to treat fever. During the Vietnam War, the North Vietnamese army suffered more from malaria than from American bombs. Their leader, Ho Chi Minh, turned to China for help. This launched the secret military Project 523. Thousands of Chinese scientists scoured ancient texts for a cure. The pharmacologist Tu Youyou stumbled upon a 4th century recipe that mentioned a wormwood decoction, but one prepared using a cold method. She realized that hot water was destroying the active ingredient. Using modern extraction methods, her team isolated artemisinin. This substance proved incredibly effective against the malaria parasite. For this discovery, which saved millions of lives worldwide, Tu Youyou was awarded the Nobel Prize in 2015. A secret military project based on a 1,500-year-old recipe won the highest scientific honor. History loves such spirals. Number 31. The arthritis that's treated with gold. Gold, the metal that drove kings and conquistadors mad, a symbol of wealth and eternity. In the early 20th century, doctors tried to use it to treat tuberculosis. The logic was strange. If gold doesn't rust or tarnish, maybe it will kill microbes too. Spoiler alert, it didn't. The treatment was completely useless. But doctors noticed a strange side effect in patients who also suffered from rheumatoid arthritis. Their joint pain and inflammation decreased. Thus, completely by accident, chrysotherapy, treatment with gold salts, was born. Injections of gold-based drugs really do slow down the destruction of joints in this autoimmune disease. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but it works. It turns out the alchemists were right about something. Gold really can grant not eternal life, but relief from a serious illness. They were just looking in the wrong place for the wrong thing. Number 32. Roman Valium. When a resident of ancient Rome couldn't sleep due to anxious thoughts about barbarians or the exchange rate of the denarius, he went not to a pharmacy, but to a physician who prescribed him a decoction of valerian root. The great physician Galen officially recommended it for insomnia in the 2nd century AD. We tend to think of valerian as a harmless placebo, a grandma's remedy, but modern research has shown that the ancient Romans weren't so wrong. Valerianic acid and other components in the plant's root do indeed interact with GABA receptors in the brain. These are the same receptors targeted by modern tranquilizers like diazepam, Valium. It's just that valerian does it much more gently and subtly. So when you take valerian, you are in fact using the same biochemical mechanism as powerful sleeping pills, just in a demo version that has been known to humanity for 2,000 years. Number 33. The pill that works by agreement. The oldest, most powerful, and most mysterious medicine in human history. It has no chemical formula, but it treats pain, depression, and even the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. It's the placebo effect. A patient's belief that they are receiving medicine can itself trigger the brain to produce endorphins and other substances that alleviate suffering. We've known this for a long time, but recent studies have revealed something utterly paradoxical. The open-label placebo. Picture this. A doctor gives a patient a sugar pill and says honestly, this is a placebo. It has no active ingredient. But research shows that pills like this help people with your condition. And they do help. Even knowing it's a sham, the patient's brain still initiates a self-healing program. It's as if your computer started fixing itself after you simply showed it an antivirus disk without even inserting it into the drive. Our internal operating system is far more complex and ironic than we ever thought. And so, our tour of this hall comes to an end. We've seen how poisons become medicines, how flies operate better than surgeons, and how rat poison saves people from strokes. The entire history of medicine is not a smooth road of progress, but a mad race where we're constantly trying to fix a broken down spaceship, our body, with a hammer, duct tape, and strange artifacts found in the junkyard of evolution. And the most amazing thing is that it works. But our museum is always expanding. Perhaps you know of another such crutch, another absurd yet effective method from the past or present. Write in the comments what exhibit number 34 should be. But for now, the doors of our absurdity archives are closing, until we meet again in the hall of the universe's latest bugs.